especially in sex, there's this really deep wound of I need to know that I'm doing it right. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, men want to please women. Like, we want to be told that we're doing a good job because then our self-worth is elevated. I'm not going to ask because maybe she'll say I'm not, so I'm just going to pretend or believe that I am. And then women, fake orgasm, which is absolutely not helpful. Or they don't really want to do it because they're not into it, or maybe it's not a no, but it's not like that. But instead of expressing this and communicating this, they do it anyway because they don't want to disconnect from their partner. Yeah. So they'll have sex even though it's a little uncomfortable, or even though they're not really ready for it, or maybe they just don't want it, but they say yes anyway because they like the guy.
Hello and welcome to Kaplankaya on the southwestern Aegean coast of Turkey. We are recording the podcast, the Harvest series, where we interview amazing speakers, practitioners and artists joining the Harvest Summit. I hope you will enjoy this episode. Hello and thank you for watching Harvest series. I am with Nic Warner, who's a transformative coach specializing in men's work and relationships. During this podcast, we had a lot of interviews of women about women pleasure, but we never had something about men's pleasure. So I had a few requests. To be honest, I'm a little bit embarrassed and I'm not an expert in the topic. So Nic, I rely on you and on your help.
Let's do it.
So, can we start by what do men typically want to learn or explore when it comes to conscious sexuality?
So, most humans, at least most men, learn about sex through porn.
Yeah.
And it is...
At a young age, yeah.
At a young age. The average age of first watching porn is 11. So, imagine you're 11 years old and you see actors on screen having sex in a way that really nobody enjoys. They look like they're enjoying it because they're actors. And then you grow up thinking that's how you have to be, and that's how you have to look, and that's how your partner has to look. And this is, when you are young and you begin watching porn, it really, the most vanilla porn is going to get you turned on because you're not used to it, and it's exciting, and the nervous system's like wow, and the brain's like wow, but then you keep watching it, and then suddenly you need something a little bit harder, a little bit darker, a little bit dirtier, and then if you watch it consistently over time, they've actually proven that boys that watch porn are far more okay with violence against women. And violence against women.
Okay.
Because something like 76% of porn scenes are overtly violent or aggressive against women, whether it's choking or hair pulling or slapping or whatever. And so then, you have these men who have watched porn almost their entire life, and the things that they see in porn to get them turned on, suddenly they don't receive in their intimate relationships. And so it takes them more to get hard. It takes them more to become erect. So suddenly they can't become erect. And then they need to think about the scenes that they're watching just to stay hard or just to kind of become erect. And then it ends up in erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation and all these things. So prior to 2006, Pornhub and RedTube and these online streaming services that are free with porn didn't exist. So men under the age of 40, it was about 3% that had erectile dysfunction.
Okay.
Since 2006, men under the age of 40, it's about 37%. So it for many, many reasons, porn is devastating to people. And it's destroying men's sex lives. So then, women yearn for a certain texture of love. And what they're getting is a replication of what men have seen on screen, which is not it.
Okay. So they also don't find women attractive because on porn they have like a typical body and no.
Well, that's what men get the idea that a woman needs to look a certain way because that's how she looks. So that's what turns him on. And then perhaps he goes to his partner of 20 years who's had 3 of his children and she doesn't look like that. So then he can't get turned on. And it's really damaging him and his body and his mind and his relationship. And so most guys that come to me about these kinds of things, typically they have premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction or a sexless relationship.
That's people who are addicted to porn, or even
Not
occasional porn can make this also?
I would say that most guys lie about their porn usage. I mean, I was using it a lot. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd pleasure myself with porn. Before I'd go to bed, I'd pleasure myself, and my partner would be there. I mean, not in the room, but I was still married at the time.
Okay.
And we wouldn't have sex because I wasn't open emotionally, and my sexual energy was depleted, and I was very much, looking back on it, I was an embarrassing partner. It was really quite disgusting how I showed up in a relationship. And if you're depleted sexually, it's like you're like a wet blanket, and you're really not able to turn your partner on in any way. You're not able to magnetize her. We speak of intimacy. There are 5 different levels of intimacy. And for men, intimacy is mostly physical. So it's sex and cuddling and kissing and touching. But there is emotional intimacy. And emotional intimacy requires you to have deep, uncomfortable conversations. And these are the things that remove blockages between you and your partner. And these are the things that actually bring you closer together. If you have a deeply vulnerable, powerful conversation with your partner, it's probably going to end up with some kind of physical intimacy at the end of it, because it's removed everything that exists in between the 2 hearts of the 2 people. And if you look at Taoism or Chinese medicine, energetically, a man's positive pole is his penis and his receptive pole is his heart. So to open a man's heart, you need to turn on his penis. The reverse is for women. To open her vagina, you need to open her heart first. So, and if you look at it as a circle, it goes out of his penis, in her vagina, out her heart, into his heart. And it creates this loop of energy. So to turn on a woman, rather what you see in porn is where you go straight for the genitals, you actually have to open her heart first. And this comes through having emotional intimacy. And the most common thing within relationships where there is no intimacy is they're stuck in this kind of, he won't be emotional, so she won't be physical. And because she won't be physical, then he won't be emotional. And it's this catch-22 of who goes first.
So how do you break this cycle?
Yeah, it's tough. So she needs to feel safe. And most long-term relationships, we spoke about this earlier, if the polarity is not there, if she doesn't feel safe, she's going to feel closed. She's not going to feel willing or able to be turned on. So how does she feel safe? Well, he needs to do what he says he's going to do. He needs to create moments for her where she can fully relax without having to be the one in charge. He needs to step up in a way that allows her to feel like everything is taken care of. And then he needs to be able to speak the truth of his heart. Because as men, we don't realize how deeply women feel. So there'll be something that we haven't shared. It's like, okay, well, I'll just hide it. And she knows. She might not know exactly what it is, but she knows that he's hiding something. And if he can't share that with her, then she can't trust him. And if she can't trust him, then she closes just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then he thinks he's, very smart because he's hiding these things. And she's like, no, he's not telling me something. And this is where the emotional intimacy comes in, and the uncomfortable conversation. And it's like, hey, whatever it looks like, I'm feeling really abandoned that you won't sleep with me. And it's like, well, wow, okay, thank you for sharing that. I feel very closed because there's no emotional intimacy. Like it takes one person to take that first step. Okay. And physical intimacy is not going to be the first step, because the woman will not be open. Mm-hmm. And men are not shown or given examples of emotional intelligence growing up. So this is kind of part of it. And the way that I work with men is that we actually get to the parts of ourselves and that allow us to be comfortable enough to have those conversations.
Is there a lot of, a lot of shame around this topic?
For sure. Yeah. That's one of the reasons men use porn, is because you don't need to be vulnerable. So the size of your penis, whether you last long enough, what your body looks like, the aftercare, you don't need to lie there with your partner. She can think you're the greatest lover in the world. Like all of these things, you turn on pixels on a screen and that's all gone. You get into real life and then suddenly, what will she think? As men, we've been conditioned to base our worth on our performance. With career, with how much money we make, with the type of car we have. Like if we are seen as having a lot and doing good, we will be more worthy. This is this bullshit story that we've been taught. So in sex, am I performing? Is she going to think that I'm doing a good job? Is my dick hard enough? Is it big enough? All of these things. And we're fed more lies through porn, that this is what it's going to look like. And this is what the woman wants. So we're doing all of these things when actually it's completely not that. And so there's so much shame about it because we don't speak about it. And the conversations that we had, there was resistance to doing this interview because it's a taboo topic. It's not something people talk about. Yeah. And fortunately, I think it's fortunately, I had to go through all of these things, like the most embarrassing, deeply vulnerable things, where it really stretched me for many, many years. And I never spoke about it to anybody because I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
And then when I started healing, I realized, actually, this is more common than I thought. I had really chronic premature ejaculation, like terrible. And from the age of 15, when I first tried to have sex with somebody, I was drunk at a party and I didn't really want to, and then she wanted to and I couldn't get it up, and I told a friend in confidence what happened, and he told all of these people at school, and then suddenly this was like...
Gosh, yeah.
So I was deeply ashamed for many, many years. And when I started to do this work and to get into these healing modalities, I realized, actually it's far more common than I thought. So now I have like literal strangers on the internet tell me the deepest, dirtiest things about their relationship and their sex life because they need to share it.
What's the preoccupation of the men? So you mentioned the size, you mentioned the lasting. Mm-hmm. What else?
Yeah, the overall performance. Is she enjoying it? This is the...
Okay.
And then you have
men
women...
are not so selfish. Or is it?
No, most of the time, men want to please women. Like we want to be told that we're doing a good job, because then our self-worth is elevated. Okay. And it might, some men are selfish. That's some women are selfish. That's just the way it is. But especially in sex, there's this really deep wound of I need to know that I'm doing it right. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to ask because maybe she'll say I'm not. So I'm just going to pretend or believe that I am. And then women, fake orgasm, which is absolutely not helpful. Or they don't really want to do it because they're not into it, or maybe it's not a no, but it's not like that. But instead of expressing this and communicating this, they do it anyway because they don't want to disconnect from their partner.
Yeah.
So they'll have sex even though it's a little uncomfortable, or even though they're not really ready for it, or maybe they just don't want it, but they say yes anyway because they like the guy. So it goes both ways, and it's really damaging to both when things are not truly expressed.
Right.
And once I got into this work, there was a couple of times I'd be lying next to a partner and would be naked in bed, and I'm like, I don't want to have sex. I said, what do you mean? It's like, I don't feel like having sex. Why not? Because I don't need a reason, I just don't want to. And then she would make it about her. Well, what's wrong with me? I said, there's nothing wrong with you, I just don't want to have sex. And two of these women actually tried to force me to have sex with them. I was like, if this was the other way around, this would be rape. And like, oh my God. It's like, well, it works both ways. And there's this belief that men want to have sex all the time, and that we're ready to have sex all the time. And
that's true.
It's part of this idea of this performance. Like, men are selfish and men always want to have sex. And it's not true. Yeah. And it's just that we don't have these open conversations, that we don't realize that.
What are the steps to help communication? Because I think that communication is a key, and vulnerability. How do you help men? Or what are the tips you give them to communicate efficiently with the girls?
Having conversations outside of the bedroom. So if you're both naked and you have a conversation about some topics, it can be really damaging because you're at your most vulnerable self. But if you have the conversation outside of the bedroom when you both have your clothes on and it's a different situation, then it's actually just much easier to have it. Having conversations before you get to the point of intimacy is always helpful.
Okay.
What are your needs? What are your expectations? What are your desires? What are your boundaries? Like they're very simple conversations that could stop a lot of pain.
Not that simple though.
Not that simple?
It's quite hard, no? No? But for you,
why?
Maybe. Well, because it's, I think it's difficult to
So but that's the problem.
This.
That's the problem. Like, imagine you really like this guy. You've just met that guy, you really like him, but you're not ready to have sex with him. Or you're not ready to have penetrative sex. So that's a boundary. But then you're intimate with him, and you really like him, but you really don't want to have penetrative sex. You're not feeling it, but you're turned on, and then in the moment he's like pushing and pushing and pushing, and you're okay, I will. And then you leave, and like the night ends. There is a different chemical makeup within men and women where the oxytocin that is released in a woman is far greater than that of a man. So she will naturally feel more connected and more attached to the man after one night.
Okay.
Where especially if he ejaculates, his testosterone drops, and suddenly the thrill of the chase, which is an actual thing, that's gone. So he'll feel disconnected. And he'll be like, okay, well, that's kind of done. And then there's a greater chance of him wanting to leave and not actually follow up and not form a deeper relationship. And then she's like, well, hey, let's continue, let's pursue this. And he's like, meh. And then he'll leave. And this is such a common thing where all it would have taken is, hey, I'm really into you. I want to be intimate with you. I have a boundary around penetrative sex. Like tonight I'm not into it, but I'd love to explore other things. And this will automatically create a space in which they can both be like, absolutely. Or they can negotiate something. But for the sake of that uncomfortable conversation, we get set up to fail because we didn't say this one thing that we needed or we wanted or this one boundary. And then suddenly everything just goes out the window.
What about this thing about saying like before men or men are genetically programmed to, I don't know how to say that, inseminate many women for the survival of the species, and women just need one man, and so now these men still have this tendency for novelty. Do you feel like it, like men are a bit bored in a relationship with only one woman? Although women can be bored also.
Yeah, I mean, it's a much deeper question than maybe I thought you realized. So we spoke about polarity before. The feminine is energy. The feminine is love. The masculine is consciousness and depth. So he is the space that the feminine exists in. If you have, you've heard the comment, we're all one, and non-duality and these things. So if you imagine that everything is one and there is no separation between anything, it can be considered God for many people, or the universe, or quantum field. Once you separate it into a duality, then you have masculine and feminine, and you have dark and light, and you have up and down, and you have positive and negative. You have consciousness and love. And this is why when the polarity is greater, when a man has a lot of masculine and a woman has a lot of feminine energy, the sexual desire is going to be much stronger. And once you make love, you come back to oneness. So there's this meeting of God, which is part of the beauty of this deep love. Typically, a man will cheat on a woman when he sees a woman that has a different texture of energy, or a different frequency of love, and more vitality than the woman that he is with. So a lot of men are with younger women because she has just this natural vitality that perhaps less, or most of the older women don't have. A woman will typically cheat on a man with a man that is more present than her. Than his partner. So, the woman that goes off with a tennis coach because the husband's busy at work, and the tennis coach is always like he gives her the time that she needs. In most cases, this is true, that she meets a man that has a depth of consciousness and a depth of presence that is greater than her partner's. Or he meets a woman that just brings a different texture of energy, because the consciousness yearns for that connection, that energy, that love, and the feminine yearns for depth. So if, some of the most incredible and desirable women I've ever met, I was not attracted to. One of them was in her 60s. She was my Tantra teacher. And I met this woman, and I was blown away by how sexy she was. She wasn't attractive physically, but she had this vitality and this energy that I was just magnetized to. A man will naturally, automatically be drawn to a texture of energy that he feels in another woman that his partner doesn't bring. So even if she brings all of these different textures of femininity, and she is the sexy seductress, and she has the librarian, and she brings the dominatrix, and she brings raindrops on a leaf in the jungle, and all of these different flavors of energy. But then suddenly he sees a woman that brings something that he's not getting at home. He may not chase it or go after it, but it will spark his interest because he desires that infinite energy that the feminine provides. So not all men go after to, inseminate everybody. There is a freedom in commitment, and there is a freedom in responsibility. And similarly, a woman yearns for just much greater depth than most men can offer. So it's a two-way thing. I know many women that have left their partners because the man just wasn't deep enough. Just as I've met many men that have left their partners because it got boring at home.
Okay. I'm gonna end with 4 very quick questions because I need to release you, Nic, but I would keep you longer otherwise. Very small questions. If a man is not proud of his size, what's your quick advice?
Get very good at doing other things.
You're making everybody laughing.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
a good advice. Okay.
You know, the size doesn't always matter, but sometimes it does.
Yeah.
Sometimes men are just... But at the same time, women have different sized vaginas as much as men have different sized penises. So you can meet women... I have a friend used to date a guy, she said he had the smallest penis she'd ever seen in her life. And then years later, she saw him with a very, very small woman. And, assuming that was, she just had a size that would actually fit him. A lot of women can't take a guy with a massive penis. Like it's too big and it hurts too much. And yeah, you can often find somebody that fits.
Okay. What about internal ejaculation?
Yeah, I wish we had more time for that.
This. Very quickly.
So men can separate ejaculation from their orgasm. We've grown to believe that it's the same thing. It's not. So you can have orgasms without ejaculating. So you can learn to move the energy within your body so you can have full-bodied orgasms. You can make love for hours and hours on end. You can just continue to be with your partner. A man's sexual energy is like fire. So the fire, it gets really hot really quickly, and if he ejaculates, it distinguishes really quickly. A woman's sexual energy, most of the time, is like a pot of water. So it takes a little while to heat up.
Okay.
And once it heats up, it can stay heated for a long time. So you want to be able to match her energy. And if you're ejaculating too quickly, the woman's going to miss out.
How to last longer?
How to last longer? Breath, awareness. So your ejaculation is part of your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight. So if you can keep your body in your parasympathetic state, which is your relax and rest and digest state, then you won't ejaculate. But we have so much tension in our bodies and so much stress around sex that most men are like on the verge of ejaculation all the time. Learning to relax the body, to stretch open the body, to bring more spaciousness to the body, it's a very complex conversation, but basically the slower you breathe, the deeper you breathe, the longer you'll last.
I can't believe I'm going to ask you this question. How many times a week should a man ejaculate, and what's the limit to be healthy?
That is a great question. It depends on the age and it depends on the vitality of the man. So if you're in your 20s, once or twice a week is okay. If you're in your 60s, it's more like once a month. And this is why when people hear of semen retention, they're like, oh, why would I stop ejaculating? It's like, well, ejaculation is one thing. It will deplete you. Energetically, it is your life force. And if you're consistently ejaculating, you're literally killing yourself. If you can prolong ejaculation, so you can make love for as long as you want, if you can learn to separate your ejaculation from your orgasm, you can have as many orgasms as you want, and you just don't ejaculate. You're going to bring more focus, more clarity, more vitality. I've put men on a protocol where for at least 3 weeks they don't ejaculate, and everybody talks about how powerful they feel because you have this life force. I think Muhammad Ali would go for 2 months before a fight where he wouldn't ejaculate because you are more powerful. Yeah, okay. And you have more focus and more clarity, and then you can have full-bodied orgasms, and then it's one of the most powerful practices a man can do.
And the last question, porn detox, you recommend?
Porn quit, I recommend.
Forever.
If you can forever, then great. I had a client that was watching 30 hours a week. So some men are just, it's a proper addiction. For those that only watch it sporadically, I'd ask yourself, do you need it? Is there something that, can you take that energy that you are cultivating and give it to your partner? Or can you learn to create that pleasure without porn? Because that is where you're going to start to, if the only way you can hit peak arousal is by watching pixels on a screen, your sex life is screwed. And your self-pleasure practice needs to be able to generate that much pleasure without external stimulation like that. So if you can quit completely, I'd recommend it. And I know that that's not possible for some.
Thank you, Nic. If you want to know more, you can watch Nic's Instagram. It's amazing. You're sharing a lot. Or go on your website.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. I did it. We did it. Thank you, Nic, for this amazing conversation. I learned a lot of things. And I put you late for your appointment, so I'm so sorry. But I hope to catch up with you later in Kaplankaya.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose.
Bye, Nic.
Bye.